What is the connection between the famous detective Sherlock Holmes and fairies? Here is the story behind it. In summer of 1917, 9-year-old Frances Griffith, with her mother, went to live with her 16-year-old cousin Elsie Wright in Yorkshire. Frances's father was a soldier in the First World War, and they had lived for a while in South Africa. Notwithstanding the difference in age, Frances and Elsie got on very well. They used to enjoy playing in the countryside behind their family's cottage in Cottingley. Once they came back home a little later than usual. They were drenched and their clothes were all muddy. The answer to where they had been was that they were playing with fairies. The adults and friends who got to know about this teased them about it. Elsie's father was a photographer, and he told them to take the camera with them if they were to go again, and the next time they went, they came back with the camera and asked their father to develop the photos. For those who are young among you, photos have not always been digital. Even when I was younger, they had to be developed chemically as negatives and then printed. When they were printed, Mr. Wright laughed them off. Their mothers had a different approach. At that time, in that area and many others, meetings of the Theosophical Society were being held on a regular basis. The Theosophical Society combined Christianity with a belief in spirit contact, angels, and other spirit entities. These groups were very popular at the time, mostly because of the number of deaths of young people during the wars. Mrs. Wright took the prints to show to the leader of their branch of the society, Edward Gardner. The pictures fascinated him, and he promised to investigate them further. He enlarged them and gave them to some experts in photography. One of these experts did not want to get involved, saying that the fairies looked more like fashion models from Paris. Another thought they looked too dramatic and contrived. Gardner asked permission from the family to use these photos in spiritualist publications and to display them in talks he was giving on spiritual entities. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle happened to be at one of these meetings. Doyle, besides being an unsuccessful surgeon, was the originator and author of the original books about Sherlock Holmes. He had become extremely popular, yet he wasn't happy. He was always striving to find something more sublime, more transcendental. He wanted to become more than just a hack. His first wife, Louisa, had died in his arms of tuberculosis, and he fell into a state of depression and tried to go to join the army in the Boer War. However, he was too old and he was made army surgeon. He did not last long after seeing the horrors of warfare. After more than a year, he remarried his secret lover for 9 years, Jean Leckie. Both of them took spiritualism very seriously, and Jean became a medium and a trance writer, jotting down, apparently and unconsciously, what the spirits were telling her. Conan Doyle became one of the greatest promoters and advocates of spiritualism. When he saw the photos that Frances and Elsie had taken, he was totally impressed. He wrote an article about them in the Strand magazine in 1921. Then he bought the girls a new camera each to get more photos of the fairies, and they delivered. 2 years later, he wrote a book, The Coming of the Fairies. These writings and the photos made great impact worldwide. Not everybody was as impressed as Conan Doyle. There were many skeptics who were surprised at how an author who had created such an intelligent and investigative detective could fall for such a prank. Conan Doyle remained convinced until he died 8 years later at the age of 71. One of the major harsh critics was another physician, John Hall Edwards, who complained that these unsubstantiated beliefs could cause mental problems. Hall Edwards had discovered that Elsie Wright worked with a photographer and must have had some knowledge on how to manipulate photos. In the meantime, the girls became adults, got married, and traveled to America, India, and Egypt before they returned to Britain. The issue rose again in 1982. A photographer, Geoffrey Crawley, was doing some research for an article on a journal of photography. He discovered and wrote about how the photos were manipulated and were the result of trickery. Strangely enough, he received a letter from one of the girls, Elsie, now over 80, admitting that those photos had started out as a prank. The girls had been teased about their claim of seeing fairies and had decided to show everybody that what they were saying was true. After the photos, many people, including Gardner, took them very seriously. The girls could not find a way of wriggling out of this conundrum, and they had to keep it going. It seems that Gardner also had his share in embellishing the photos. Elsie had traced pictures of nymphs from Princess Mary's gift book, added wings, cut them out, and propped them on the grass using long hatpins. They did not expect that they would cause such a worldwide sensation. Later on, the BBC filmed Elsie and Francis confessing to their hoax. When we look at the photos today, we realize how fake they are. The most obvious thing is the speed. Camera lens at the time had to be left open for a few seconds to give enough exposure to the chemical on the plate. In fact, the waterfall in the background looks blurred, but the wings of the fairies are static and are not fluttering at all. Nevertheless, in 1997, their adventure was released as a movie called Fairy Tale: A True Story. The greatest miracle, however, is how a person as clever and as educated as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle could be so gullible as to believe these photos to be genuine. This makes us realize two important things. No matter how intelligent and educated a person is, they are still not immune to credulity and to believing absolute nonsense. Besides, we find lies all around us. Children do lie too, even though they may look innocent. Many strange beliefs started out as lies and imagination initiated by children, as we'll see in later episodes. I would like to thank you for watching and listening to this interesting topic, and if you have any comments and questions, please send an email to me on shettigo@gmail.com, and I'll try to talk about what you suggest or answer your questions. In the meantime, thank you for watching and listening, and I hope to see you in the next one.